Hello and welcome. I'm Maria Ressa. This is Rappler Talk. We've just had, I'm going to call it historic elections. We still have the partial unofficial count, and we're waiting for the official results to come in. But at this point, we know that 72% of the voters have cast their ballots for more than 18,000 positions. That's 46.1 million Filipinos who voted in 12 hours. This is a historic for many reasons, and we'll go over them in this Rappler Talk. But joining me is one of the Magic 12. In fact, he's at number 6, has tracked at number 6 since the counting began, Sonny Angara. Senator Angara.
Hi, Maria. How are you?
Nice to see
Thanks
you
for
again.
having me. I'd like to greet all the viewers, followers, all the Rapplers, if that's what they're called.
Thank you. How does it feel?
It's relief more than anything. It's a grueling campaign, and we're just waiting to be proclaimed. And of course, we're excited to get to work, but of course, after maybe a bit of a vacation.
You mentioned it. It was a grueling campaign, and just watching it, grueling not just for the candidates, but also for the folks who are covering, like us, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
What did you learn in these campaigns?
Well, it'll probably take a bit of time to get that. But I think, the power of the local governments, I think that's shown in the showing of some of the president's favorite candidates. When he pushed for, I think, his 3 favorite candidates. So that's Bongo, Bato, and Francis Tolentino. And you see how that kind of gave them a bump in the last 45 days, and particularly in the last week, I think, of elections.
Right.
That's why they're doing very well right now in the final polls. I think the president showed that he's got very strong endorsement power, and the country votes very differently. I think that maybe it's nothing new. It validates what we know, that it's very difficult to gauge the public pulse, because there's not one public pulse. There's several public pulses, if you want to call it that, depending on which part of the country you're from.
Let's go take a look at the results page. Come with me. Go to ph.rappler.com and you'll see where we are right now. This is in the unofficial count. You can see Cynthia Villar's number 1, Grace Poe at number 2, Bongo, a newcomer to politics, but most endorsed by President Duterte. He's number 3. Number 4, Pia Cayetano, Bato de la Rosa, another newcomer to politics. Number 5. And with us, number 6, Sonny Angara, Dito Lapid. Number 7, number 8, Amy Marcos. Number 9, Francis Tolentino. As Sonny mentioned, three of the ones endorsed by President Duterte in the top 12. Bong Revilla, Coco Pimentel, Nancy Binay, and then at 13, 14, JV Ejercito and Bam Aquino. Now, we have enough of the official count to look at, so let's look at that. In the official count, which started last night, the first things that came in were actually the OAV, the overseas absentee votes. In 2016, that was only about 1.8 million voters and less than 1%. But what was interesting in the overseas votes was one man who never made it here, Mr. Ong. Willie Ong was number 2 there, right? So let's look at the official results now, and if you take a look, it's pretty much tracking the same way. Cynthia Villar, Grace Poe, Bongo, Pia Cayetano, Bato de la Rosa, Sonny Angara, Amy Marcos, Francis. It looks identical, right? This early, we're
That's
looking.
the absentee voting?
This is the official results.
Okay.
OAV, let's look at what that looks like now. And Bato de la Rosa is number 1. This is actually what was last night. Bato de la Rosa, Doc Willie Ong at number 2, Bongo at number 3, right? This shows you the power of Facebook. Amy Marcos is number 4. If we take a look at the time lapse of, the way this has worked, you can see it's pretty identical.
Except for Willie Ong.
Except for Willie Ong. There we go.
Again, 10 million Facebook followers.
Overseas absentee voters, that shows you the power of Facebook. Social media, Sonny. What role did social media play here?
Not so sure, because I think it's not universal in the country still. I think it's growing, definitely, no doubt. But if you just based your impressions on social media, it would seem that the candidates, in fact, maybe the opposition had the upper hand because it seemed that maybe that's just the nature of social media, and maybe things like Twitter and Facebook are a venue for those who are dissatisfied. So maybe the content is dictated by that, to a certain extent. Maybe the satisfied people don't really post about their. That's just an hypothesis.
In terms of, again, like you talked about the other lessons, what will stand out about the 2019 elections when we look back years from now?
Well, what will stand out is definitely how not a single member of the opposition. Well, depends, no. I think the 12th spot is still up for grabs. So.
Not if you look at the.
Really?
Yeah.
Has
Well,
it,
in terms of, it was almost 99%.
For the unofficial.
Yeah, for the unofficial
And
count.
who is number 12?
It is still Nancy Binay.
Still Pina.
Yeah.
So if that holds, then it's the first time, at least in my time in politics or in my lifetime, I think that there's no opposition member who made it, because there were when I ran in 2013, there were 3 opposition members who made it: Senator Binay, Senator Ejercito, Senator Honasan.
Yes.
Made it in 2013, and the converse was true in 2007 when my father ran, when there were more opposition members who won, actually. That was kind of like a protest vote
Right.
at that time. I think there were only 2 administration candidates who made it at that time. So, it's a reflection. They say the midterm is a referendum on the president, or on the administration.
Right, right. Actually, this one really seems to be a referendum on President Duterte himself, right? Every person whose hand he raised, I think he said, except for one that he was disappointed by. Let's just go back to the results, and Sonny showed us of Nancy Binay and Bam Aquino. This is the unofficial results with all the votes counted, so this is final. You can see the final canvass report, and you can see how close it is between Nancy Binay.
This is 99%.
This is final.
This is final.
Yeah, for the unofficial count, Nancy Binay at 2.366 million, Bam Aquino at 2.335 million. Wow, super close. So maybe
2
we
million?
will.
2 million? That's
why
those numbers don't
Oh,
sound right.
sorry, official.
Because they should have around 13
I
million.
see.
Yeah.
Sorry, you're right. I was on the wrong tab. Let's go to the unofficial one. So this is still 96.34% of the precincts reporting Nancy. So Bam Aquino is still, it's a significant number down. Referendum on President Duterte. It's a controversial time also because let's start with the war on drugs, right? The UN estimates that more than 27,000 Filipinos have been killed since July 2016 here. That was not an election issue.
Maybe it means that the people are quite supportive of it. Although I think there's some data coming out of the survey outfits that say they wish there was more judicial intervention in the process. So that's something to look at.
But they
rather than kind of the police being both law enforcer and judge in a sense. No?
That was actually, I think, in the surveys that he was popular. They supported the war on drugs, but they didn't want the killings.
The methods were somewhat something they disagreed with. I think there's a finding there, no? But I'll have to go back to that.
Yeah. So in the 90 days you were campaigning, what did you learn about the Filipino voter?
Gosh, what did I learn about the Filipino? He's very diverse. Depends on where you go. If you go to Mindanao, the Filipino voter is overwhelmingly pro-administration. If you go to a place like Bicol or maybe Western Visayas, then it balances out. There you see people like former Senator Rojas, Senator Aquino doing well. So we try to track and to kind of get a feeling of the sentiment of people, and those are some of the things that came to us now.
Was it different from the last time you campaigned?
Different. Well, the last time I campaigned under the Aquino umbrella, the president was also wildly popular at the time. So we were benefited by that, and a lot of the locals also carried us. But I think the opposition was stronger then because you had a figurehead that was Vice President Binay. So I think there was greater parity at that time compared to now. Although, having said that, Vice President Lenny was also the figurehead of the opposition. No?
But a fragmented opposition. Let's go there. What did the opposition do wrong?
Well, I really don't know, but I think what one person told me that stuck to me is that they said when you have a leading brand, you topple that leading brand by creating or building your own brand, and you don't do it on the terms of the brand. So basically, I think what he said was that the opposition was reacting. They didn't have their own set of issues, but they kind of just reacted to what the president was saying. So every time the president said something, there would be this reaction coming from the opposition. That's the opinion of a friend of mine. And I thought, oh, maybe you have a point there, you know. The way, you know, Tide used to be the #1 laundry brand in the Philippines. And then suddenly you had this local brand, I forgot the name, but that kind of came up. It did it by making...
No, hindi siya local.
I'm not
Sorry,
sure.
let's...
Just figure it out. You'll find it. You Google it, top laundry detergent, you know. But basically they said they did it by building that brand over time and kind of, you know, doing a grassroots campaign. So, yeah, maybe that's some indication of how to do it, you know, messaging, branding.
Aside from that, like in terms of a formula that worked for you, you know, how much of it was the same? How much was different?
Well, overwhelmingly still dictated by TV, I think,
So
because of the reach of TV. So,
yeah.
So I think the greater part of our budgets went to television advertising, you know. But I think one of the things we learned from 2016 also, the previous election, was that you can't ignore your ground game, meaning not just advertising, but also kind of having boots on the ground and people actually pushing for you, warm bodies pushing for you. So we tried to balance that out somehow. I don't know if we were totally successful.
What do you think you did really well?
Really well? I'm not sure if we did anything really well. Well, maybe message discipline. We just did try. I think in 2013 we had too many messages. We were trying to communicate everything we had done, and now we kind of had that one slogan, Alagang Angara, which kind of we tried to encapsulate our various achievements and our various dreams and hopes and aspirations in that one slogan. No? So then we tried to keep it simple. So I think maybe that's
that
the
is
one thing we
normal,
learned
right?
from 2013.
Yeah, it has to be. Nuance disappears on the campaign trail.
I think because of the nature of TV, you know, you have, if you're lucky, you have 30 seconds. We didn't have any 30 seconders. We only had 15 seconders. So there's not a lot you can say in 15 seconds.
Right.
You know? So you try to keep it simple. You try to keep it crisp. You know.
Did you learn any new things about being a politician during these campaigns?
How much? I think the longer I stay in the game, the more I realize that the more I don't know.
I say that all the time about countries. Yeah.
That's ironic. No?
Yeah.
You just learn more about these various fiefdoms and just realize there's a hell of a lot you don't know. And you just try to have that attitude where you try to absorb, and you hope your staff has that same attitude, and you hope it brings you to good places. You know?
Given everything that you've seen in the field, the different campaigns, the different phases of history that your family and you have gone through, will you change as an incoming senator in this?
No, I don't think so. I think we've always been kind of like what you might label development legislators, meaning always looking at human development and how to kind of make sure that you're pushing that envelope and development goals, things like that. You know, so investment in human capital, that kind of thing. It's always been a theme, and I don't think that'll change going forward. Yeah.
One of the things that you did grapple with during the campaign is a policy issue that you took a position on. You were the author of the train law.
One of.
Okay,
Not the
right.
only one.
So, and this was something I remembered having discussions with you about this also, right?
Sure.
This isn't something that you bring up in a campaign.
Yeah, I mean, if you have 15 seconds, you don't raise taxes. I heard some people say they increased take-home pay. That's part of the train. So, but it's that one is difficult to do a simple. That's a risky one, you know.
This
so,
was a tough one
yeah.
to handle, especially when
that
you're
was the
coming to
main
the campaign.
that was the main issue being thrown against me, basically, especially the excise tax. You know, so how it dovetailed with high inflation
Yeah.
Late last year. You know.
Yeah.
But thankfully, well, the wind wasn't blowing in my face too much, so to speak, this election, because inflation went down to 3% and wasn't too much of an issue, I think. Yeah.
You must have thought about that when you supported the train law.
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure,
and you
sure.
knew that you were going to have to go back and campaign.
Yes. Yes.
What was the risk? How did you calculate this, and then how did you deal with it in the actual campaign?
Well, we wanted to spread out the pain, because the Department of Finance wanted a 6% increase in the excise tax on petroleum across diesel and gas, and we said let's spread it out a little bit so the hit isn't too hard on the people, you know. And at the same time, there was a big debate in the Senate among those who supported the bill. I think 18 senators about what were the mitigating measures. So I think. Going forward, we have to be conscious of if those mitigating measures, if we did the right thing in putting those mitigating measures in place, and they're enough to mitigate because the government did predict that there would be some pain, but whether the medicine was commensurate to the pain, that's something we have to look at.
So I do remember also that the Senate asked for changes in it that.
Oh, for sure, we made a
right.
lot of changes. We made a lot of changes.
Because it was the inflationary part was the
Yeah.
part that we were all worried about, and the connection to gasoline, to fuel.
Yes, yes.
But looking back on this, was this the right move to have done train?
I think tax reform was good.
Yeah.
The sugar sweetened beverage was probably good, because then you'll have a healthier population going forward. I think in the long run it will be seen as a good thing, but maybe the timing might have been a little bit, And in looking back, I probably would have spread it. We spread it out over 3 years. We might have spread it out over 4 or 5 years,
6
knowing
years.
what we know now.
Yeah.
The 6 peso increase.
And how did that impact your campaign run? I mean, would you have been higher
Well,
up
this is a bit too nuanced, I think, for the mass.
For the mass.
So I don't think it was. It's something that I wouldn't have encountered a person in the marketplace and said, "Hey, why did you do 250 excise tax?" You know. It's those details that are hard to explain to the people. You know, that's why we decided it's better maybe not to use that as a campaign issue.
So, and how did you opponents threw it against you though, right?
Right.
So how did you handle
Well,
it
we
when it was
explained
thrown
what
at
we
you?
did, and
Yeah.
we explained that the excise tax is just one part of the whole package of train reforms, and maybe 90% of the critics haven't read the whole bill, to be honest, and they don't know that we lowered the donors tax, we lowered the inheritance tax, we lowered the income tax for 99% of the population, we lowered the taxes for small and medium entrepreneurs. You know, these things have been kind of praised by a lot of sectors, no? And that doesn't get a lot of attention. We tried to make the filing simpler, make the tax return a fixed number of pages, so so it's more relatable, if you want to call it that. You know. So we did a lot of things that I think will be appreciated in the long run, but at the moment, given the noise about the excise tax, it goes over a lot of people.
Given the makeup that we're seeing now of the Senate as the results are coming in, what differences do you see compared with the outgoing Senate? Any trends, any personalities?
Well, you're looking at a 20-man majority for the president compared to a 17-person majority. Also,
Right.
It's gotten slightly stronger. It was already called a supermajority at one point, so I don't see that hasn't changed. But having said that, I think the Senate will still be the home of the healthiest policy debates in the country, because the big issues will still be debated there. And I don't think you'll see a new constitution in 2 years' time. It's something it's something that the media is kind of throwing around, that, hey, federalism's going to pass already. I don't think it's that easy or that simple, to be honest.
The new the three new politicians that have walked into the Senate without really much political experience. Well, two of them for sure, right? Bongo and De La Rosa. What does this show?
It shows the endorsement power of the president, I think, and also, but I think in the case of Bong, I think he's a non-politician, but I think he's been very exposed to politics, having been at the side of the president for so many years, for maybe the better part of 2 decades, no? And even General De La Rosa as PNP chief, he's not new to politics. I mean, when you're PNP chief, there's a lot of politics there in the institution, you know. And Francis Tolentino was a long-time mayor of
Yes, Francis Tolentino is the one.
of Tagaytay as well.
Right,
So,
right.
so they're not newcomers in a sense, no. Maybe newcomers to to legislation, but they're exposed to the world of politics. They know what's going on. Yeah.
Both De La Rosa and Bongo have, it's hard to say go. I always have to go Bongo. Incoming senator or after the vote count, right? Both Bongo and De La Rosa have actually said that their main priority will be to be the president's men, right? That they will be the president's men in the Senate. Given that Senate will have to debate contentious issues, you know, how independent do you think this Senate will be?
Well, some will be more independent than others, that's for sure. I think your statement already shows that.
You can challenge me.
Oh,
It is
no,
what
no,
you
no,
said.
I mean,
yeah, no.
You know, and fairness to them, I think they know who butters their bread, and they know what made them win. So I think they feel that's the role they have to play, you know, and more power to them, because you know that's what they believe. So it may make for vigorous debates, because many people feel that the Senate has to be an independent institution that takes independent positions. You know, there are times when you could collaborate. There are times when you may not need to, or it may not be a good idea to do so.
Some of the criticism against you that's come up is that in the last 3 years, knowing that you're coming up for re-election, you've relatively played it safe, right? Is that going to be? Is it true? Number one, and number two, will you be an independent voice? Is that?
Yeah, I think there are some issues where we took certain positions, like on the impeachment of Chief Justice Sereno. I think we signed that resolution where we didn't agree with the position of the Solicitor General that they could remove a sitting Chief Justice by co-warranto. So
Yes.
that's one. That was independent of the position of the executive. We also signed the resolution calling for an investigation into the Kian
De Los Santos,
Kian
yeah,
case, the Kian
right,
De Los
right. I
Santos
remember
case.
that. Yes.
So that one we crossed party lines. So I think when we answered the call, I think in certain instances.
Such a popular president. It's been very clear, and this actually has cemented his popularity. Let's just look on the screen, and you'll see here that this is a piece by Lian Buan. The last time the opposition didn't win any Senate seat was 80 years ago. This is, if this the unofficial count carries through, 0 to 12 loss for the opposition is worse than the Marcos years. It was during the time of 1938, during the time of Quezon, and this loss is a revert to pre-war Philippines, or to the very first time that midterm elections were actually held during the Commonwealth. Is this just President Duterte's popularity?
Could be. It could be, because a lot of the opposition slate were new names, so maybe familiarity, I think, plays a big part in elections also. So I think they spent the better part of this election introducing themselves. So that's already a tough sell in a sense, no?
Yeah, yeah.
So, whereas if you look at the people who ran on the administration ticket, or even the independents, they probably already had their awareness levels in the 90s.
Yes,
So,
yes.
so that definitely plays a role.
Okay, there have been some questions. Please go ahead and tweet questions to Senator Sonny Angara. From Twitter, this is Twitter user Mama. Are you going to repeal the train law? Are you aware of people's sentiment of the train law?
Yes, we read the messages on social media. We talk to people on the ground. And we do our own research actually. So I think some of those who've been complaining are the transport groups, and so. But we discovered that a lot of the transport groups don't get the pantawid pasada, which is one of the social mitigating measures. So rather than repeal, what the call has been to speed up the distribution. And in fairness to the DOTR, I think they sped it up for the last few months, no? The last 4 or 5 months. So it's not so much repeal; it's more of tweaking here and there, so that the pain felt by those the affected sectors would be mitigated.
What's the first thing you're going to do in the new Senate?
Well, I think what we do is we refile the bills that didn't pass the last. But we'll also be doing some studies into. I think there's some areas that we want to look into, like job creation. I think is one of the main
Right.
issues that doesn't receive as much attention as it should, Maria, because your country has 6% unemployment. It's probably the highest in Southeast Asia, and there's not a lot of legislation talking about job creation. There's a lot of legislation talking about protection of labor, a lot of labor rights, things like this, regulation. But in terms of really pushing job creation, there's not a lot of legislation out there.
I mean, it's really interesting because before President Duterte, jobs was always within the number 1 or number 2 concerns of Filipinos, right? And then in the 2016 elections, moving into that, all of a sudden, drugs moved from number 8 to number 1 in that campaign. Jobs
I
is
suspect it's still top 3, Maria. I suspect. I don't. I
jobs,
talk to
job
people.
creation.
When you talk to people, they really say, wala kaming trabaho,
Yeah.
or kulang yung kita. So it's jobs and incomes actually.
Yeah.
And if you look, we're very proud that we got a credit upgrade, and that's great, But when I spoke to these credit agencies, they point out one thing is that this is what you call the BBB. So you're not quite A, you're not quite up, you're not the best investment, but you're kind of the next level, the next tier. We're the lowest income in that group of
Yes.
countries,
Yes.
at maybe $3,000 to $5,000 per GDP per capita.
Yeah.
So that tells you something, Maybe I don't have all the answers, but I think it's something we have to go down. It tells me that we're not producing enough goods here. We're not producing quality jobs because maybe there's no infusion of technology. We spend very little on science, research and development. Things which are very boring, don't make the front pages, but actually make a country run, and actually put food on the table. So.
Your main priorities moving forward are going to be jobs.
But education. I think we've never left education.
Yeah.
I think we've in my decade and a half in politics, the fight has been for access and quality in education. We've kind of addressed the access. We passed free kindergarten. We did the K to 12. And then recently we did the free college tuition. So definitely we've opened the doors, and those doors are open for people to walk through. But we have to ask, what are we giving our people? I think that's the focus should be on that in the coming years, because there have been some findings regarding reading comprehension that were mabakulela tayo dyan. And that's the basis of learning. If people aren't learning to read early and aren't comprehending what they read, and you're not teaching a love of learning, then you have a problem.
Learning, you're focused on this, right? What about going hand in hand with that are values? And again, while President Duterte is extremely popular, and he's shown it in the ballot, the values, right? This is a president who is sexist at best, misogynistic at worst. You're a progressive man with a very strong wife, How do you handle that, and what kind of message does it send to Filipinos?
Well, I think the president, based on the population in Davao, they don't take it very seriously, his remarks. They know he's joking, I think. So it's not something that they hold him to account, because it's almost like when he gives a speech, it's like he's having a beer with his audience, It's kind of, so that's why they give him a lot of leeway in this respect, I think.
I would call you a champion for liberal values. Is that correct?
What does that mean? Yeah.
Women's rights,
meritocracy,
education,
for sure,
meritocracy,
absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I guess part of the question I have, and again, it goes to some of the policies we have in place, a drug war that has killed people, we're almost saying, I guess one of the questions I have for that list of people and President Duterte's popularity is, are we saying it is okay to kill? Is it okay to denigrate women? And your response is actually, yes, Davao takes it seriously, but President Duterte is no longer just mayor of Davao. He's
That's true.
the president of our country.
Yeah,
And
I mean, like many in the population, I wish he wouldn't say these things, but I think when he says it, it doesn't. It's not a life changing. It's not a life or death issue for many people. I think what the election shows is that people are many concerned about more gut issues.
yes,
So when you talk about liberal values is also prosperity, and we haven't done very well in that respect.
fighting poverty.
It's not just the civil and political rights. You're also talking about economic and social rights. People want houses, they want food on the table, they want education, they want good social services. So that's part of the whole liberal canon of values, I think.
You are also coming in at the same number as you were in the Senate role as the last time you ran for senator, right? At a time when hate on social media is really being actively used and inflaming Filipinos in a way we never were. Like,
yeah, it's a bit disappointing because well, it's called weaponization, and I think Time did a story on it. How the internet has been taken over by hate, and it's a shame because for the first time, someone in Cagayan de Oro or Sulu has the chance to talk to his senator,
right.
and he could tell him, "Hey, senator, we need classrooms here." But instead, he's telling me, "Hey, senator, fuck you! I don't like your face."
Right.
It's kind of sad,
Right. In other countries, they're talking about legislation for things like Facebook and inciting to hate. We've had hearings. Some of them, actually it was Senator Grace Poe who called some of the hearings. Bam Aquino called some of them. I mean, what do you see happening in the Philippines?
I
Sorry.
think we have...
Go.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You were saying...
We have a cybercrime law which deals... it's just what the internet is. It's a new venue which accelerates the communication process. So that's why you've always had propaganda, you've always had kind of fake news, but just now it's just so vast and so swift. That's why it's like going from firing guns to nuclear weapons. So it's a difference of degree. But you have, in terms of principles, you still have the same laws which apply. I mean, you still cannot slander a person. You still and there are ways. It's just a little more difficult to enforce the laws but there are ways of doing it. So.
One of the things that your use of social media, I guess in terms of gauging how social media has been used, any lessons learned in how to use social media for campaigns?
I could probably be better. That's the number one lesson. I could probably be better in my use of social media. I think my wife always tells me, "Why did you tweet that?"
Oh my God, there was someone.
Or she tells me, you don't have to answer everybody, but so I'm still learning, actually. I'm still as much a student of it as I am a participant.
There's one of the things that we've talked a lot about, which is patriotic trolling, online state-sponsored hate. I mean...
Patriotic trolling.
So it's the use of hate to stifle dissent. Like, for example, in the case of Laila de Lima, right before she was arrested, three prongs that were used to attack her online. Her credibility in terms of corruption. The second was sexual attacks that really brought her credibility down even further. And then the third, right shortly before she was arrested, #arrest Laila de Lima. What kind of defense can this be done with impunity?
When it's state-sponsored, it's a bit unfair, because the state's supposed to be neutral in a sense, But having said that, those weapons available to the state are also available to individuals.
It's a scorched earth policy, though, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think at some point we'll say, what are we all doing here? Shouldn't be a race to the top instead of a race to the bottom?
And maybe that's the question I was trying to get at with our values, right? Are we going to play to our better selves, or are we going to play to our worse selves?
I think it's up to the leaders to kind of set the tone, and say, let's put that aside for a while, and let's talk about this, because people's attention spans are limited, and you choose. Any leadership has to prioritize issues.
You're a leader now. You have been a leader, Sonny.
That's right,
What's your
that's right.
priority? Our better selves, or I mean, similar in the United States, right?
Priority is really the good life. It's how do you push that good life agenda for people? Like how do families have more take-home pay? How do families have more graduates in the family? How do they ensure better jobs? I think you know it's these are kind of universal aspirations in a sense, no?
Yeah.
And
So nothing has really changed, right? You're still pushing forward.
you know, it's the funny thing is people see all these differences between the different administrations, Arroyo, Aquino, Duterte. Well, I see the continuities.
Explain
If you look
that.
at anti-poverty policies, what the GMA use? It's the 4Ps, which was expanded by Aquino, which was expanded by Duterte. It's still the main centerpiece of the last 3 administrations. If you talk about social services, where has the money been going? It's been going to education and health, and that started. And if you ask GMA what's her main achievement, I think I'm not sure if it's Rappler or CNN, but it came out. She said was fiscal stability.
Yeah, she
So
always
that
said.
fiscal stability, where has that additional money gone? It's gone to PhilHealth, increasing membership. It's gone to increasing services of PhilHealth. That's across 3 administrations. If you look at education spending, the increase from Aquino to Duterte is there. There's a lot of continuity. If you look at the goal of increasing infrastructure spending, that's also continuity from Aquino to. So, you know, for someone who's been in politics for a decade and a half, there's a lot of continuity actually. People like to see the front page, but if you read the other pages, there's a lot of that hasn't changed.
So it's like a
honestly.
long-term view. What's also interesting, though, is if you look at how Filipinos elect our president, it's always a reaction to the one
That's
before.
true. That's true. Absolutely. It's
Right.
it's kind of a evolving telenovela.
Marcos,
the good-
Aquino, Ramos. Aquino, a housewife. Ramos, the general. Ramos, very firm and disciplined. Estrada, man of the people. Is that right?
Yeah,
Then
yeah.
Gloria
There's always,
Arroyo.
there's always different strands of leadership, and at one point or another, one has proven to be in the ascendant. So maybe in 2022, you'll see another, rather than maybe the strong leader, you'll find another type of leader emerge.
2022. So, do you think federalism? President Duterte has talked about federalism, charter change, a new constitution. In the last Congress, in the House of Representatives, they did pass a draft from former President, the Speaker of the House,
Yes,
Gloria
yes.
Arroyo. Do you see this happening in the new Senate?
The one who really pushed federalism was the House rather than the president. And if you listen to the president's speeches during the campaign, we attended maybe 15 or 20 rallies with him. I don't recall federalism taking up even 1% of the airtime, to be honest. So that's why I'm very curious when I watch the news and they say federalism will now pass. Like, where is that coming from? I mean, who was talking about federalism? More than anything, it's the congressmen, who wanted to shift to a federal form. It's not really the executive branch. If you talk to Secretary Dominguez, the economic managers, they're like, that's a risky thing, So it is curious to me where that agenda is coming from, to kind of say that the federalism is top of the agenda, because that's not my impression.
That would be interesting because the fear, of course, is that if a new constitution is passed, term limits will go away. I mean,
Yeah.
look, the last time this happened, the constitution was changed.
Yeah, but you know what, Maria? That kind of forgets that any constitutional change has to go through a plebiscite, And
Does-
do you really think the people will approve the abolition of term limits? Do you think they will approve a self-serving constitutional change? I have faith in the people. I don't think they will.
Do you think that you don't need to go through that if it's a CONAS versus
Any constitutional change needs
we'll
a
still have
plebiscite.
to.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So then that goes right back to 2022. I mean, this early, it was very interesting to see the ruling party, President Duterte, split his attention, give Hugpong and PDP Laban, right? That's
It's unusual times.
and actually, it to me seemed to highlight how weak our political party system
Yeah,
is.
it's definitely, I think I'll agree with you on that one. It's not as strong.
But in 2022, it's very clear that President Duterte seems to be grooming Sara Duterte, his daughter. It's so early to ask you this, but I'm going to do it. It's unfair. I mean, Sara Duterte, is she someone who deserves support?
But it's funny because the last speech the president gave he said the president will destroy you to Mayor Sara. So I don't know if that's encouragement or or the other or otherwise, no. But having said that, if Duterte does well, President Duterte does well in the next 3 years of his administration and keeps this kind of popularity, then obviously she would be a front runner.
Interesting. I will ask you a self-serving question. Press freedom. We've certainly felt a pushback against the president, and it seems to be a global thing, right? It's tough to be a journalist nowadays.
For sure, for sure.
I've had, Rappler has had 11 cases and investigations in 14 months. That's almost a case a month. We continue doing what we do, right? But, you know, how would you gauge the state of our democracy?
I think every president feels that he's being treated unfairly, you know. That's something Pinoy and Digong have in common, and even especially Gloria also.
Yes.
If you look across in my time in politics, they made the same complaint that they felt they were being treated unfairly. And I was asked if I felt press freedom is under threat in the Philippines. I look at it in a regional perspective, and you know, and we have one of the freest presses in the region, and people really,
I'm going to challenge you on that one. Not as perhaps in the maybe 3 years ago, only because, and part of it is, you know, please feel free to push back. But for me, my experience is personal, and all we're trying to do is to be a journalist.
It's tough. No?
But it, you know, of course, President Aquino didn't like Rappler or didn't like me in particular, and it's really funny that.
I like you. You're very likable.
Oh, I just ask questions, Sonny. I just go, because I really want to understand. I mean, that's what we're trying to do, to try to hold power to account. So I think if you look at the World Press Freedom Index, it shows that all of Southeast Asia is at the bottom half, Association of Southeast Asian Nations. But the Philippines has dropped.
Quite a bit.
18 in last year, and then this year it dropped another one. So,
well, we should work on that then.
How will you work on it?
How do we work on it? Well, making sure that these cases maybe get dismissed if they're harassment suits, and then kind of calling out anyone who kind of puts the media under threat.
I guess part of it is and this will be the last question before I ask you your final thoughts, because you should be celebrating. This was a tough, strange race, and how healthy is our democracy today?
I think it's fairly rambunctious as it's ever been, but then again, there's so many threats to democracy, because you have the corporates, you have the wannabe dictators, you have the strong men, there's so many different threats to democracy, but having said that, I think it's still alive, and maybe we should be looking at ways to strengthen it. I guess your preferred avenue would be to freedom of the press, and then I agree with you on that. But also maybe trying to lift boats, by increasing prosperity. I think that maybe then that would increase the acceptance of liberal democratic values, strengthen it. I think, the assumption used to be that people would automatically, given a free choice, would automatically prefer liberal democracy over dictatorship. But maybe that assumption has been challenged in the last 2 decades. If one doesn't come with the other, if prosperity doesn't accompany democracy.
Actually, and this is, I don't know if you read the book On Tyranny by Timothy Snyder.
No, I haven't read.
20 lessons from the 20th century. Mm-hmm. He talks about kind of how, all of these trends that we're seeing, the use of social media, the taking away of certain freedoms, how in the end, Nazi Germany, like that didn't happen. They were elected to power. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You're now one of the guardians. You are and have been, I guess. How strong? It's these checks and balances. It goes back down to your thoughts about the checks and balances for such a strong president. He's probably stronger than former President Marcos now.
But he hasn't. It's his strength is still a product of within the legal institutions. He hasn't really changed any of the legal institutions in a sense. Maybe changed behavior, but so he'll be gone in 3 years. So then that's a different style of leadership maybe. So we'll have to see. What we have to look at is making sure these institutions still play a role and still have the Constitution is respected,
Right.
the Bill of Rights is respected. Those are the things that we have to be looking at.
Fantastic. Your last thoughts as we wait for the official count and the proclamations.
Well, I just want to thank you. It's a really nice office. And,
Thank you for coming
yeah,
here.
and Rappler is always first with the news and first to come out with stories. So I have to commend you on that.
Thank you. Good luck, and I hope you get some
Thanks
rest
very much,
after.
Maria. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Senator Sonny Angara. He is on Twitter, so tweet questions. We have.
Bash me. Feel free to bash me.
Try not to bash him. I'm Maria Ressa. Thank you for joining us. This is Rappler Talk.